My arms were duct taped to a plastic lawn chair. Legs, too. Mouth was free, which told me they either wanted to hear me scream, or they were dumb enough to think I wouldn't. I blinked a few times. Light was dim, flickering. Somewhere overhead, a ceiling fan spun lazily like it had given up on its life's purpose. Warehouse, by the looks of it. Concrete floor, one metal roll-up door, workbench in the corner. Looked like the kind of place where bad deals went to die. Then came the voices. You think he's awake yet? Don't matter. We got what we need. Sent the video already. My head throbbed like I'd been kicked by a mule. I turned just enough to catch movement. Two guys, early 30s maybe, both dressed like the clearance rack at a Bass Pro Shop exploded. And one of them, I swear to you, was wearing my company's hat. I squinted. Canyon Freight Logistics. Yep, my logo. Which meant someone had either been in my hotel room, or I was in deeper than I thought. How long you think till his people pay up? The taller one asked. He had a voice like a beer can being crushed sharp, thin, a little too excited. Daryl said a day, maybe two, the shorter one said. Fat guy. Cheeto dust on his shirt, even in a hostage situation. Said this guy's got deep pockets. Company just landed that UPS subcontract, right? My stomach twisted, but not from fear. Daryl. I should have known. 6 months ago, I fired Daryl Knox for embezzling company funds. He covered it up well, shell invoices, forged time cards, the whole nine. I could have pressed charges then, but I gave him the out. Walk away, I told him. Just don't come back. Guess he took that personal. Hey, boss man's looking at you, said the tall one. I met his eyes. Didn't flinch. Didn't speak. They wanted a reaction, fear, confusion, some hint that I'd crumble under the pressure. They weren't gonna get it. You don't grow up in West Texas with a drunk father and a busted fence line without learning how to keep a straight face. You got anything to say, big man? Cheeto Shirt asked, stepping closer. You want to negotiate? Beg? Pray? I stared at him like he was a dead deer in the road. No. He chuckled. All right, your call. But for the record, this ain't personal. Yeah, it is, I said, my voice dry, gravelly. You're wearing my damn hat. They both blinked. And for one small, beautiful second, I saw it. Uncertainty. The fat one stepped back. Tall guy rubbed the back of his neck. You sure he's not supposed to be gagged? One muttered. I smiled just a little, because now I knew something they didn't. They weren't professionals. They were idiots in over their heads. And that was going to be their biggest mistake. Here's a funny thing about folks who try to play outlaw. They usually watched too many movies and took too few punches. These two yahoos, I was already thinking of M as Camo and Cheeto were prime examples. Sloppy, loud, and nervous. You could smell the uncertainty on M, like they weren't sure whether this was a felony or a prank gone too far. Me? I was just talking inventory. Not of the room. I already clocked that. One exit, no windows, one janky security camera tucked in the corner, blinking like it was on life support. What I was watching now was their rhythm. Where they stood, how they moved, who they listened to. They mentioned Daryl. That confirmed the brains of the operation, if you could call a man with 2 DUIs and a fake LLC brains. Daryl Knox was all charm and no anchor. Had a way of talking fast, smiling wide, and leaving behind a trail of bounced checks and broken promises. And now he thought he could ransom me for $1 million and change? Buddy, I don't even pay that much for logistics software. You want water or something? Camo asked, like this was a dentist's office and not a kidnapping. Sure, I said. You got cold brew? He blinked. Cheeto barked a laugh. Man, this guy's got jokes. You're the ones who taped a grown man to a patio chair, I said, deadpan. Seems like you're the joke. Silence. Then a long stare. Then Camo muttered, Daryl didn't say nothing about him being mouthy. They walked off, muttering to themselves. Probably to go text their boss for instructions, maybe argue over whose turn it was to watch me. Good. I needed space. See, this wasn't my first run-in with bad men doing dumb things. I'd been jumped in a parking lot once in San Diego. Guy wanted my watch. I gave it to him. Followed him out, waited till he was showing it off to his buddy, then politely asked for it back. I got it, and his wallet, without throwing a punch. Lesson there? You don't beat crooks with fists. You beat him with patience. I looked down at my arms. They duct-taped me sloppy. Around the wrists, not the chair back. Meant I had leverage. Meant, with time and some discomfort, I could work a hand loose. Maybe get a leg free. But not yet. First, I had to know more. I tilted my head, listening. Out in the hall, Camo was talking loud. Loud enough to hear without trying. Yeah, we got him right here. He's fine. Sitting there all calm. Like he ain't scared at all. Pause. Well, yeah, we sent the video. Daryl said his company's worth, like, 20 million. Now, that part was true, technically. Canyon Freight Logistics had grown fast in the last 5 years. We optimized last-mile delivery routes for folks like UPS and Amazon. Not flashy work, but it paid real steady. What Daryl didn't know was, I wasn't the guy with the checkbook. I was the guy with the blueprints. Most of my wealth. Tied up in assets. Trucks, warehouses, contracts. You want a quick payout? You're barking up the wrong tree. So this ransom? It wasn't gonna fly. Which meant I had 2 options. Wait and hope someone paid it. Not likely. Flip the table and walk out on my own terms. I glanced at the corner where the fan groaned overhead. Yeah, option 2. An hour later, Camo wandered back in with a bottle of water and a peanut butter granola bar, like he was my parole officer. Here. Figured you'd be hungry. I nodded. Thanks. You got Wi-Fi. Man, shut up. He left again. And that was the moment I knew. These boys weren't killers. They were just dumb enough to be dangerous. The real threat was coming. Because if Daryl was still Daryl, he'd want to handle things personally. And when he showed up, that's when I'd make my move. Outside, a diesel engine grumbled to life, someone moving a vehicle. Probably to prepare the drop site, or whatever nonsense Daryl thought sounded cool. I leaned my head back, eyes closed. They thought I was a paycheck. They thought I'd sit still. But I wasn't sitting still. I was setting bait. And Daryl Knox was about to learn what happens when you try to bury a man who's already been through hell and build a company on the ashes. By mid-afternoon, I'd worked my right wrist halfway out of the duct tape. Wasn't graceful. I had to twist, flex, rub it raw against the edge of the chair arm. And let me tell you, there's nothing dignified about trying to Houdini yourself loose while 2 part-time kidnappers argue about brisket rubs in the hallway. Camo swore by brown sugar. Cheeto insisted on mustard binder. I didn't care what they used, long as they marinated in failure by sundown. Yo, he's moving too much in there, Camo said suddenly. Footsteps. I snapped my wrist back in place just as he opened the door. Need to pee or something? He asked. I looked at him flat. You got a bathroom in this dungeon? He hesitated. Well, yeah, kinda. Break room's got a toilet. I'll manage. He muttered and walked off, scratching his head like the situation was starting to itch. Good. That meant he was questioning things. See, fear makes you cautious, but doubt makes you sloppy. By evening, I'd picked up a few more useful facts. There were only 3 of them. Camo, Cheeto, and Tex, a grumpy, silent fella I hadn't seen yet, but apparently he had a pistol and a limp. Both details mattered. Daryl wasn't on site, yet. They kept saying he'll be here tomorrow, which gave me exactly 1 night to turn their dumb little rodeo into a full-blown stampede. The video was sent to my business partner, Sheila. Camo had said her name like it was just another finance lady, which told me all I needed. They had no clue Sheila was a former Marine who once tackled a burglar with a broken broom handle and still filed payroll by 8 a.m. In short, help wasn't coming fast, so it was on me. I waited till the shift change, which, in this case, meant Camo went out for a smoke while Cheeto took over guard duty. He came in with a lawn chair and a Dr. Pepper, sat down 5 feet away, and started scrawling on his phone like we were killing time at a DMV. Y'all always this professional? I asked. He glanced up. What's that mean? I mean, you ever think maybe this whole thing's a real dumb idea? He snorted. Says the guy taped to a chair. You're not wrong. But ask yourself something, big fella. What happens when your buddy Daryl decides you're the loose end? He stiffened, just a tick. Bingo. Y'all do his dirty work, right? Do the snatching, the watching, the threatening. But when the cash comes through, you think he's split-tinted even? Cheeto blinked. I leaned forward as much as I could. Voice low, real calm. Or is he gonna take the money, tie up the last few loose ends, and disappear? He sat there, jaw working. I could see the wheels turning in his oversized head. Truth was, I didn't need him to turn on Daryl. Not yet. I just needed him rattled enough to miss a detail. Like the fact that I was now 1 good twist away from popping my right wrist completely free. The opportunity came at 10:13 p.m. I remember the time because the old wall clock buzzed every hour like it was having a panic attack. Cheeto had nodded off. Phone on his lap. Feet kicked up. Gun. And yeah, he had one, holstered under his hoodie, not even snapped. I breathed slow, twisted my wrist one more time. Pop. Came loose like an old screen door. Didn't move right away. Just sat there, one hand free, heartbeat steady, listening to him snore through his nose like a tired tractor. Then, slow as molasses, I reached down, peeled the tape from my legs, and stood up. Cody Mercer, back on his feet. Still duct tape on one arm, but I left it. Made me look like I still might be restrained if someone glanced in quick. I crept toward the workbench. Found what I was looking for. A screwdriver. Flathead. Rusty, but sharp. Also found a roll of electrical tape, a box cutter, and, no kidding, a half-eaten Twinkie. I took the screwdriver. Left the Twinkie. Then I went back to my chair. Saturday. Waited. Because it wasn't time to run. It was time to flip the power. Ever sabotage a generator in the dark with one hand still taped to a lawn chair? No? Then you haven't lived, friend. I waited until Cheeto wandered off for a smoke, again, this time mumbling something about needing fresh air, like that was going to fix the stench of nerves clinging to him. Truth is, he was spooked, and spooked people get real generous with mistakes. 10 seconds after he stepped outside, I moved. Didn't sprint. Didn't breathe heavy. Just slid out that side door by the break room, screwdriver tucked in my waistband like a prison shiv. Outside, the night was thick. Moonlight caught the edge of an old metal shed about 30 yards across the gravel lot. That'd be the generator shack. Most crooks don't think past step one. Kidnap rich guy, demand money, profit. They forget you need power for the cameras. Freezers. Lights. Phones. So I figured, kill the power, kill their confidence. The generator itself wasn't much. Looked like it came out of a Craigslist deal gone wrong. I pried the vent plate open, cut the fuel line just enough to leak, and yanked the oil plug loose with the flathead. 5 minutes later, it was bleeding, like a stuck hawk. Then I jogged back inside and retaped my legs, just enough to look secure. Sat down. Waited. Showtime hit about 20 minutes later. It started with a flicker. Just a hiccup in the lights, like a ghost passed through. Then came the full blackout. Lights, fan, everything. Even the security camera made a sad little beezy's tea before going dark. Yo, came a voice from the hallway. Camo. What the hell? Cheeto stumbled in with a flashlight app blinding me in the face. What did you do? He snapped. I blinked real slow. Man, I've been sitting here looking at a stain on the floor for 6 hours. You'll got a rat chew through a wire or something? He didn't like that. But he also didn't have an answer. Camo came in a second later, holding a rusty revolver like a guy who'd only ever fired one on a PlayStation controller. We're gonna fix it, he muttered. You move, I shoot. I gave him a real bored look. Suit yourself. They disappeared outside with a flashlight, arguing again. That gave me just enough time to reach under the chair, grab the box cutter I stashed earlier, and finish the job on my wrist. Now I had both hands, a sharp tool, and a busted generator backing me up. It was officially open season. I didn't go hunting, though. Not yet. Instead, I slipped toward the old break room, grabbed a glass bottle from the trash, a handful of plastic forks, and a metal thermos lid. You might wonder what a man does with that kind of junk. Answer, whatever he needs to. I made noise. A clatter. A crash. Just enough to make him jumpy. Then I posted up by the corner, screwdriver in one hand, box cutter in the other. Sure enough, the door burst open, and Camo stumbled in, flashlight swinging like he was in a ghost movie. He didn't see me, but I saw him, grabbed him from behind, yanked his shirt over his head hockey style, and drove the flat of the screwdriver into his gut, not to kill, just to drop him like a sack of bad potatoes. He collapsed, groaning. Gun clattered to the floor. I kicked it into the dark, then crouched over him and whispered. One down. Cheeto came next, hollering for backup. Wyatt? Wyatt, man. I guess that was Camo's real name. Somehow that made it even better. I let him get close. Then I whistled. Just one short note. He turned his flashlight toward the sound, and that's when I stepped into view, face lit just enough to show him the blood smear on my hand. His eyes went wide. You're supposed to be tied up. Guess someone forgot to double knot, I said. He ran. I let him. Why? Because scared men don't call the shots. They just start breaking things. 5 minutes later, I'd zip-tied both of them with cords I found in the maintenance closet. Camo was still groaning. Cheeto had locked himself in the bathroom before realizing the window didn't open. Both of them were out of the game, which left just one man. The head rat, Daryl Knox. He'd be here by morning. And when he walked into that warehouse expecting a payday, well, let's just say I was fixin' to throw him the most expensive surprise party of his life. Sun came up mean and hot, like it wanted to burn the sins right off the asphalt. I was already waiting. Fresh shirt, hands clean, little cut on my cheek from last night's scuffle, but otherwise intact. Camo and Cheeto, still zip-tied, duct-taped, and stashed in the mop closet like forgotten janitors. I'd given him just enough water to keep him conscious, and just enough warning not to try anything cute. Didn't trust him to stay quiet forever, but I only needed one more hour. Daryl was due, and I'd planned a real special welcome. Now, let me tell you about Daryl Knox. He wasn't the type to get his hands dirty, more the type to hire two dumb cousins and promise him a cut from a score he never intended to split. Back when he worked for me, he wore too much cologne and acted like QuickBooks made him a genius. Had this cheap gold pinky ring that screamed, "I lie for a living." The day I fired him, he said, "You'll regret this. You think this company makes you untouchable, but everybody's got a price." Guess he figured mine was $1.5 million. Turns out, I'm a little more expensive than that. 7:54 a.m. I heard the truck before I saw it. Big diesel F-250, matte black, rental tags. He pulled up fast, like he thought he was showing up to a parade in his honor. Door opened, and there he was. Same slick hair, same smirk, same bad taste in sunglasses. Daryl Knox, looking like the love child of a loan officer and a racetrack hustler. He stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, then waved at the security camera above the door. Didn't know it had died hours ago. Didn't know the only man left inside was the one he thought he still had tied to a plastic chair. He walked in cocky, whistling some country tune like he was strolling into a bar. Didn't even look around. Just muttered, "Cody, you alive in here?" like it was a joke. I let him take a few more steps before I stepped out of the shadows near the old vending machine. "Morning, Daryl." He froze, looked at me, then slowly smiled. "I'll be damned," he said. "You're tougher than I thought." "Nope," I said. "You're just dumber than I remembered." He glanced around, no panic yet. Probably thinking his boys were nearby, maybe waiting to jump out and rescue the plan. I let him look. Let the silence grow teeth. Then I tossed a roll of zip ties at his feet. "Sit," I said, "before I make you." He laughed once, short and sharp. Then he saw the pistol tucked in my waistband. His smile vanished. "You serious?" "I'm deadly serious." He didn't sit, but he didn't run either. Just held his hands up and said, Okay, we talk. Let's talk." I stepped closer, slow and calm. "You think this is a negotiation?" I asked. "I got you recorded. I got your boys duct taped. I've got enough evidence to send you to federal prison wearing socks with flip-flops. You don't get to talk, you get to listen." He swallowed hard, and I knew I had him. Now, I didn't hit him, didn't rough him up, didn't need to. I pulled out my phone, hit play, audio recording. His voice, clear, laughing, saying, "He's worth at least $1 million. His partner's the one to send the video to. She'll fold fast." Daryl's jaw tensed. I let the recording run for a few more seconds, then paused it. "Guess what, Daryl?" I said. "She didn't fold. She sent it to the FBI." That got him. He staggered back a step. I pulled the final card, flashed him the USB drive I'd copied everything onto: GPS data, phone pings, generator tampering, audio, security cam footage. All this, I said, already backed up to the cloud, already shared with the authorities. He stared at it like it was a ticking bomb. "It's over, Daryl. You just ain't figured out how loud it's gonna end." He tried to lunge for it. That's when I stepped aside and let Sheriff Rudy Vaughn walk in. 60 years old, gut like a feed sack, and more patient than a church pew. "I'd listen to the man, son," the sheriff said. Daryl spun around, startled, then tried to run. Didn't make it 2 steps before Rudy put him face first on the concrete with a grunt and a click of cuffs. "Camo and Cheeto," they screamed like babies when Rudy opened the mop closet. I stood there through the whole thing. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. Just watched Daryl get walked out like the trash he always was. He called me every name under the sun. I just waved and said, "See you in court, partner." Some folks think the law's like a 6-shooter, loud, fast, final. But me? I see it more like a wood chipper. Slow, unforgiving, grinds everything it touches down to mulch. And buddy, I had Daryl Knox lined up head first. The morning after the sheriff hauled him off, I was sitting on the motel balcony with a cup of gas station coffee, phone in one hand, notebook in the other. Didn't feel triumphant. Didn't feel angry. Felt focused. Daryl thought kidnapping was the play. Thought he could dodge paper trails and fake his way to freedom like he always had. But he forgot I don't play checkers. I play ledger sheets. So I called Sheila. She picked up after one ring. "Tell me you're okay," she said. "I'm fine," I replied. "And Daryl's in custody." A beat of silence. Then, "All right. What do you want me to do?" I smiled. Because that's the kind of business partner Sheila is. First thing we did, freeze his assets. Turns out, Daryl had opened 3 shell companies in Nevada under dummy names. Transferred tens of thousands out of company accounts just before he got fired. That was step 1 in the grand embezzlement tour. But what he didn't know, Sheila's cousin works in financial crimes. And I'd been quietly building a paper trail since the day I canned Daryl, waiting for the moment he messed up loud enough to bring the roof down on himself. Kidnapping? That was loud enough. Within 48 hours, we had civil suits filed in 2 states. Fraud, breach of contract, identity misuse. RICO claims, that's federal. Every penny he ever touched under my company's name was now subject to seizure. His truck? Leased under a fake company? Gone. The warehouse? Rented using forged docs? Eviction notice stapled to the damn door. I even bought the lockbox he stored his personal funds in at the pawn shop. $10. Sweetest 10 I ever spent. Then came the fun part, public exposure. Now, I don't care about tabloids or Twitter trends, but I do care about small business newsletters, logistics industry forums, and investor circles. I leaked it all. His arrest. The audio. The shell corporations. A statement from me about resilience in the face of betrayal. It was professional. It was cold. It was lethal. The next week, 3 companies pulled out of deals Daryl had on the burner. His credit got shredded. His accounts flagged for review. And every bank in Texas? Suddenly real curious about his loan applications. By Friday, I got a call from his lawyer. "Mr. Mercer," the man said, real polite. "My client would like to negotiate a settlement." I took a long sip of coffee before answering. "No." Pause. "I'm sorry." I leaned back in my chair, phone to my ear, boots crossed on the balcony rail. "You don't get to sell me back the house after you lit it on fire. You don't negotiate with snakes. You stop him. Mr. Mercer." I hung up, then blocked the number. Next day, I took a ride out to the Amarillo courthouse. Dropped off a letter with the DA's office, clean, typed, detailed, explaining exactly how Daryl had used company data to plan the ransom. Included timestamps, email chains, phone logs. Didn't ask them to press charges. Didn't need to. Just left it on their desk and walked out. Let the law decide how much weight to throw. Meanwhile, Daryl? Still sitting in county, wearing orange, trying to get anyone, to bail him out. But no one would touch him. Not after the news broke. Not after they read the words ransom, embezzlement, and former VP of Canyon Freight Logistics in the same sentence. That night, I sat on the hood of my Silverado under the Texas stars, watching trucks roll down I-40 like fireflies with somewhere to be. Didn't feel angry. Didn't feel smug. Just done. Daryl had tried to bury me for money. Instead, he'd buried himself. And now? Now it was time for the cherry on top. Because lawsuits were great. But what came next? Was reputation demolition. And buddy, no insurance policy covers that kind of fire. Now, revenge can be loud, car chases, fireballs, broken noses. But there's a finer kind. A quiet kind. Like termites in the rafters, chewing through everything until the roof caves in on its own. That's the kind I served Daryl next. See, a man's name is like his credit score in business. Once it drops low enough, even gas station hot dogs won't trust you. And Daryl? Well, he was about to find out what it meant to walk into every room with his reputation already sitting in the trash can. I started where it hurts. Industry credibility. Had Sheila reach out to every vendor Daryl ever dealt with. Not with threats. Not with drama. Just a short email with court case numbers and arrest details, and a note. Canyon Freight Logistics has formally severed all past ties with Mr. Knox. We are actively cooperating with law enforcement and regulatory investigations. That last line? Like a skunk spray in a perfume shop. Suddenly, anyone who'd ever said, "Yeah, I think I've worked with Daryl," was scrubbing their inbox and deleting contacts. 2 logistics expos dropped his pending speaking gigs. His own LinkedIn got reported so many times, it vanished like a fart in a thunderstorm. Next move. The Southern businessman's guillotine, the The church bulletin. You might laugh, but down here, ain't nothing spreads faster than a prayer request with a side of scandal. All I had to do was visit my cousin Millie. She ran the bulletin at her church and was the most connected woman this side of the Pecos. I didn't even ask her to spread it. Just said, you might want to pray for Daryl Knox. He's gotten into some real mess, FBI-level mess. Her eyes lit up like a stovetop. By Sunday morning, Daryl's name was on every potluck table and whispered across every folding chair. By Monday, well, let's just say his mama stopped answering the phone. Then came the final trick. The legacy flip. Daryl always liked to tell people he was instrumental in Canyon Freight's growth. So I made sure the real story came out. Sheila and I published an op-ed, nothing flashy, just a clean, proud statement about how the company had overcome a betrayal from within and emerged stronger, committed to transparency and security. We didn't name him. Didn't have to. The industry forums lit up like someone poured kerosene on a beehive. I watched one thread unfold on a trucking exec forum. Wasn't Daryl Knox part of Canyon? Yeah, until he kidnapped the damn CEO. Wait, what? Link to news article. Jesus. I signed a temp contract with his shell company last year. BRB canceling everything. And just like that, his name wasn't mud. It was quicksand. I didn't lift a finger after that. Didn't have to. Daryl's own weight dragged him down. The man who once bragged about having friends in every state couldn't get a phone call returned. One of his rental properties got vandalized. Nobody saw nothing. The last guy who hired him to consult sent a very polite request for a refund, followed by a subpoena. And Daryl? Still sitting in county. Lawyers circling like buzzards, billing him by the minute while he watched everything he'd built, or stole, vanish like summer rain on hot concrete. I got a call from the sheriff that Friday. Son, he said, I ain't seen a man's life collapse that fast since that preacher ran off with the bingo money. Appreciate you, Sheriff, I said. But I didn't collapse anything. Daryl just finally leaned on the wrong lie. He chuckled. You know what I like about you, Cody? What's that? You didn't shoot him. You just let gravity do the work. They called it the people versus Daryl Knox. But let me tell you, by the time it hit the courtroom, it felt more like the state of Texas and every person Daryl ever screwed over versus one very nervous man in a discount suit. It was held in Amarillo Municipal, one of those squat courthouses with linoleum floors, humming fluorescents, and a vending machine that only gave out Diet Dr. Pepper. Not exactly glamorous, but fitting. Because this wasn't about showmanship. This was about accountability served like cold cornbread, dry, heavy, and sticking to your ribs. I took the witness stand on a Wednesday. Wore a plain gray suit. No tie. Boots polished. Hair combed like I was going to church, not war. Judge Lanford presided. A no-nonsense woman in her 50s, eyes sharp enough to shave bark off a tree. Word was she'd once fined her own nephew for parking crooked. I liked her already. Daryl? He showed up trying to look remorseful, but all he managed was sweaty. Same slick hair, same gold pinky ring, now dulled and chipped like everything else he touched. He had a lawyer, but not a good one. One of those types who shows up with a file folder and an empty briefcase. Didn't matter. The evidence was already a freight train. The prosecutor, a young, polite fellow with the intensity of a border collie, laid it all out. Heavy checkmark the embezzlement. Heavy checkmark the fraudulent shell companies. Heavy checkmark the kidnapping plan. Heavy checkmark the audio recordings. Heavy checkmark the texts. Heavy checkmark the video of his goons loading me into a van like a sack of potatoes. At one point, the bailiff had to pause the video because one of the jurors started muttering, "That's the dumbest damn thing I ever seen," a little too loud. The courtroom chuckled. Even Judge Lanford smirked, slightly. Daryl sank lower in his chair. When it was my turn, I didn't grandstand. Didn't spin a tale. I just told the truth, plain and simple. I hired Daryl Knox to help run a logistics company, I said. He robbed it blind, then tried to ransom me like a plotline from a bad soap opera. And the only reason we're all here today instead of at my funeral is because he's bad at crime and worse at math. A few folks in the gallery laughed. Daryl's lawyer objected to the tone. Judge overruled it with a wave of her hand. I sat down, and that was that. The trial lasted 3 days. Could have been 2, but Daryl insisted on testifying in his own defense. Big mistake. He got up there and spun a yarn about how it was a misunderstanding, how his business partners got out of hand, and how he never meant for anyone to get hurt. Judge Lanford just looked at him like she'd heard better excuses from kindergartners caught stealing paste. Verdict: guilty. On all counts. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. Kidnapping. Identity theft. Obstruction. It hit like dominoes in a tornado. And then came sentencing. Judge Lanford leaned forward, steepled her fingers, and said, real calm, "Mr. Knox, you don't just lack character. You lack sense. You're not just a criminal, you're a sloppy one. And if Mr. Mercer hadn't been cleverer than you, we might be reading about a body, not holding a trial. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to serve 18 years in federal custody. Pay $2.3 million in restitution. And when you get out, if you get out, you're never going to touch another business license in this state again." Then she banged the gavel. And just like that, the man who thought he could ransom me for $1 million had to ask for permission to use the prison phone. You'd think I felt some kind of closure. Truth is, I just felt relief. Relief it was done. Relief he was gone. Relief I didn't have to sleep with one eye open anymore. Camo and Cheeto got lesser sentences. Pled out. Testified. Probation, some jail time, and the kind of community service that comes with reflective vests and porta potties. They sent me a letter, actually. Typed. Full of spelling errors. Apologized for getting caught up in something stupid. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. They'd already lost more than they'd ever gained back. And me? Well, I went back to work. Quietly. Steadily. Bought a new warehouse just outside Lubbock. Hired a dozen more drivers. Gave Sheila a raise and the corner office. Didn't tell the world what I'd done. Just kept building. Because while Daryl's legacy was serving time and eating state-issued bologna, mine was still moving freight across America on time, under budget, and 1 mile closer to the future. See, most folks think revenge ends when the gavel drops. But that's just the public part. The real revenge? That lives in the cracks. In the aftermath. In the moments where your enemy's world keeps crumbling, and they don't even know you're still holding the matches. And buddy, I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. After the sentencing, Daryl Knox went off to federal custody with all the dignity of a raccoon being scooped off a golf course. But before he shuffled into that courtroom in shackles, I'd already started the final phase of my plan. I stole his future right out from under him. See, back when Daryl was setting up his little ransom side hustle, he made a mistake. Well, a lot of mistakes, but one in particular. He registered one of his shell companies, Panhandle Systems, LLC, under my company's P.O. Box address. Sloppy? Yeah. Illegal? Also yeah. But more importantly, it meant that on paper, I had a claim. So I filed a civil lien on it. Then another on the warehouse he'd rented under that name. And then, with Sheila's help, I quietly acquired all remaining stake in Panhandle Systems for the cost of a filing fee and a cup of coffee. And just like that, I legally owned the same company he used to try and kidnap me. Why? Because Daryl used that company to stash money in the Caymans. Offshore accounts. Hidden under layers of nonsense and 2-bit shell games. Thing is, when you own the umbrella, you own the umbrella stand. So we followed the paperwork. Sheila called in a friend who worked financial crime enforcement out of Houston, real smart guy who liked coffee more than sleep. And by the end of it, we traced every single dollar Daryl had squirreled away. $678,000 in laundered funds. Guess what? I got every penny. Not as restitution, as business profit. Because by the time the courts caught up to it, those funds weren't in Daryl's name anymore. They were in Panhandle Systems, LLC, which was mine. So what did I do with the money? I could have bought a boat. Could have paid off every truck in my fleet. Instead, I built a grant fund. Named it the Knox Foundation for Rural Business Recovery. Total dig. Completely legal. Website, logo, press release, the whole 9 yards. Even printed a little flyer with a quote across the top. What you build on lies is bound to burn. No one but me and Sheila knew the full story behind it. But that wasn't the point. The point was Daryl's legacy was now helping fund the same kind of small-town businesses he used to scam. Every time someone pulled up that site, his name was right there, not as a founder, as a cautionary tale. And I didn't stop there. Remember the warehouse where they held me? Guess who bought it at auction? Yep, me. Had it torn down, leveled the lot, built a logistics training center on the same patch of dirt, named it Canyon West Dispatch School, and right out front, a bronze plaque. In memory of lessons hard learned. Didn't mention Daryl by name. Didn't need to. Because every time someone walked into that building to learn how to build something real, something honest, they were standing on the ashes of a lie. Last I heard, Daryl was working in prison laundry, mopping floors, filing appeals that no one reads. The restitution order still stands. But he doesn't know the real prize he thought he was hiding? I already spin it better than he ever could. He doesn't know that every time a kid in West Texas gets a shot at a better job, it's because of them. Because of what he tried to destroy. Now that's what I call poetry with boots on.